Welcome to my channel and my first makeup tutorial. Let's achieve this look. First things first, I prep the skin using my skin food. Make sure it's nice and moisturized. And I do my eyebrows. If you have a pencil, I tend to use one that's black brown to make sure I fill in all the spots in my eyebrows, and then I clean it up with my concealer. I use a small brush to make sure it's like perfect, and then I blend out the concealer using my beauty blender, and I wet it a little bit with some setting spray to make sure I get all that concealer. And then of course I do my primer. This here I'm using the e.l.f. Power Grip, and I make sure it dries a little bit. I then go with my concealer that's close to my skin tone for my under eye, just to get it to like brighten up a bit and cover all my dark spots with a concealer that's a little bit lighter to make sure it all blends in well. And I'm using the Fenty right here. I think my color is N400. I then use a setting spray before I blend this out, just to make sure it melts into my skin. And I use a brush to blend out the concealer under my eye, and my beauty blender to blend out the concealer over the dark spot to make sure like I press it into my skin. And look how nice it blends in and matches my skin tone, that dark and lighter shade. Then after I blend this in, I go in with my e.l.f. Halo Glow, and I use this because today I'm not wearing any foundation, and again I use my beauty blender to press it in to like get it up in there. And usually I use the brush for this one, but for some reason the beauty blender is just doing such a good job. And then I go in with a brighter shade of my concealer for my under eye, because I want to make sure it pops a little bit, and of late they've been looking dark. So if you have an issue with like dark under eye, a brighter concealer definitely helps. And while this is drying, I use my contour and my liquid blush and put it on my cheeks, my forehead, and then my chin. And then I just spray it with my setting spray and blend for the gods. I usually use a brush for this just to make sure it's like blended properly. And this is where your makeup is either hit or miss. It's the blending. You got to learn to blend. Make sure that you get up in there and have different brush for different spots. Obviously, your concealer brush can't be the same brush that you use for the blush. And when you're doing the blush on your cheeks, I used to smile. Now I just make sure that it's like pressed on my cheek and I'm not smiling. And to finish off, I blend out the concealer on my under eye with the beauty blender, and I'm tapping but not like pressing in too hard. I want to make sure like the product is being blended but not like overly, if that makes sense. And I blend out my nose with my brush, and finally setting my under eye with my translucent powder. And before I press the translucent powder in my skin, I actually press it out on my arm before, just to make sure the loose product isn't creasing under my eye. And most of the spots that I'm putting the powder on is where I put the concealer, because I want to make sure that this makeup is a little bit matte. That's the beauty of a good setting powder, it won't move. So if you want to make sure your makeup is in place, just use setting powder. And while I do my eyes, I let the powder sit a little bit. Here I'm using the Maybelline Precision eyeliner, and it's waterproof. I definitely take my time to get it in place. And funny enough, I never used to do my eyes, but once you learn how to do your eyeliner and put on a little bit of eyeshadow, it makes your eyes pop. And so here I'm using the Juvia's Place, and I'm going in with like a baby pink glittery color, making sure I blend it out. And I'm using like a fluffy brush to get in the crease of my eyes. And again, once you do your eyes, I just feel like it pops. And I do the white in the inner crease right here. I feel like this gives it just like that, like cute look. And then for my waterline, I use a pencil to kind of get in there. I feel like it gives it just like that look. It makes a difference. And once I finish this, I go in with my lash curler to make sure that I curl my little lashes. And you might not have like big long lashes, but once you use that eyelash curler and like get in there, it makes it easier for the mascara. And I use the mascara, but I don't put a thick coat on, especially if it's really hot outside. And make sure it dries before, you know. And do the bottom lashes as well. Even if it's a little, it makes it pop. It just gives your eye that effect that you do have more lashes than you do. Next, I do my bronzer. Make sure that I get the spots that I use the contour on. And I put it on my forehead and just like get it in there. I'm using NARS Laguna. I then use my CoverGirl press powder to smooth out, you know, any harsh lines from the concealer and like anywhere that wasn't blended properly. I then go in with my blush, and a trick that I learned is not to smile, to make sure I actually see where it's going to end up afterwards, you know. And then I use this little glitter that I got, or is a highlighter, and I put it on my nose and blend it out with my beauty blender to some extent, and like press it in with my fingers. And I just pat a little bit on my cheeks, and if you have a brush you can use it as well. And then I finish off by, you know, blending out everything, any harsh lines, making sure everything is cohesive with my beauty blender that has like some loose product on it, so it makes sense to use it. Yeah. Next up, I do my lips. This is my favorite part of my makeup. And I make sure to go along the lines. I don't really like to overline my lips, but yeah. So I'm using Nightcrawler here, and I make sure that I get in the lines right here, because when I put the lip gloss or lipstick on, I want to make sure that it meshes well with the lip liner. I then go in with my first lip gloss. Here I'm using the e.l.f. Bubbles. It's so pretty. And then I finish off with my Fenty Hot Chocolate. And when I use two colors, I just feel like it stays longer. I don't know. I love this color. I just feel like it's popping. And we finally made it to the end. I'm setting everything in now with my e.l.f. matte spray, because I want a matte look. And then I'm using my Maybelline Lasting Fix. This combo lately has not failed me. Yeah, and this is the final look. Thanks so much for watching. Bye.